Hi, here I want to take you through a set of independence exercises which I found really effective and I've worked through and taught for at least 20 years or so, based around a 4/3 rhythm. So to illustrate that, I'll just play the 4/3 with the feet. So that's playing the quarter note in 3/4. The bass drum is playing every 3 16th notes. 1, 2, 3, and up. Couple of great bits of independence with that would just be playing single strokes over the top on the snare. Or paradiddles, for example. We could take that to the snare and the hi-hat and we get a groove. So let's try a similar idea to that, but we're going to play eighth notes on the hi-hat, accenting the quarter note. Just one thing to consider, sometimes accenting the quarter note like this in a groove isn't the most effective thing. It adds a sort of start-stop quality to the hi-hat, but for the purposes of independence, it's good to be able to do it. So eighth notes on the hats, accenting the quarter note. So still, now just these two, we're still 4/3. And now we're going to add a backbeat, which is going to make the whole pattern 6 beats long. So in that example, we've got the first part of the independence we need for the 6 exercises. That's that we can play the dotted eighth note on the bass drum against that hi-hat pattern. The next step would be the same thing between these two. So we're going to play the dotted eighth note on the snare, or we could move it around the kit, against that eighth note pattern. Okay, so for the first of our 6 independence exercises, we're going to play this sort of counterpoint rhythm between the bass drum and snare, which in isolation sounds a bit like a shuffle. But we're playing that through the 16th notes against that eighth note hi-hat pattern. So once again, in 3/4, 1, 2, 3. We could take that to the ride cymbal and move this hand down the toms. And at any point when you take that to the ride, you've got 3 options over here. You could step the quarter note, the upbeat eighth note, or all of the eighth notes. So I'll go for the middle one of those 2 upbeat eighth notes. And so for example 2, we're just going to reverse that. So the snare plays the 4/3 rhythm. And once again, if we isolate the snare and the bass drum, it takes on that shuffle sort of rhythm. But in context with our eighth note hi-hat pattern, it sounds like this. And now I'll move that over to the ride, move this hand down the toms and step the upbeat eighth note. So what you've hopefully noticed by this point is that this 4/3 rhythm against this hi-hat pattern, the beauty of it is the fact that within the 4 notes that you play within the 3 beats, you've got the 4 different placements of 16th notes. So for example, the 4/3, you start on the quarter note, then you've got the 4th 16th note of beat 1, the and of beat 2, and the E, or 2nd 16th note of beat 3. So on to example 3. Here we're going to play the 4/3 rhythm on the bass drum, and we're going to fill in all of the missing 16th notes with ghost notes in your left hand. So in isolation, it sounds like a triplet feel. But when we bring it together, that bass drum is the 4/3. So I'll start without the snare drum. That example is great for building up the ability to place ghost notes within a groove. And the element of it that students tend to find the most challenging is the fact that the second left-hand note you play coincides with a hi-hat. I'll take it over to the right cymbal and step upbeat eighths. We're going to encounter that figure again in examples 5 and 6, but first up is example 4, where we reverse in example 3. Now the snare is playing the 4/3 rhythm, and we fill in the missing 16th notes on the bass drum. The basis for example 5 and 6, as I just mentioned, is the same as example 3, the ghost note example. Only here we're going to either pull out the first of the 2 ghosted notes or the second note. I personally think the easier one of the 2 is pulling out the second note, and so I'm going to play that one first. So this is a really essential ghosting groove where you're pulling out a backbeat volume equivalent accent that's been preceded by a ghosted note. And so finally we're going to accent the first of the 2 notes, so we ghost after the accent. Once again, you could move that to the right cymbal. And so hopefully by working through those 6 examples, you'll develop the ability to maintain that hi-hat pattern and play whatever syncopated figure comes to mind with the bass drum and the snare. So I hope you find these exercises beneficial. I know I certainly have, especially in conjunction with different hi-hat patterns, perhaps broken 16th notes. And that's perhaps something we'll look at a later date, as I'll hopefully do some more of these videos. So if you've liked it, give it a like, perhaps subscribe and leave any comments below, and I'll see you on the next one.